حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني الهاشمي الذي سمي في السماوات بأحمد وفي الأراضين بأبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الهداة المهديين سيما أولهم أمير المؤمنين وآخرهم بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وقتلتهم وغاصب حقوقهم ومنكري فضائلهم ملعونين. Amma ba'd, for the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziyah, for the enlightenment of the graves of your marhumin, of the graves of the Shahada, Ulama and Siddiqeen, for the safety of the followers of Ahlul Bayt around the world, and for the safety and the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullah al-A'zam, Arwahun al-Fida, please recite your loudest salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In this world, the one true reality is that there is only one wajibul wujud, one necessary existence, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything else in this realm, in this existence, is mumkinul wujud. It is a contingent being. It only exists because the wajibul wujud exists. As long as the wajibul wujud continues to bestow upon that which is contingent, the contingent continues to live. But the contingent being cannot manifest anything from itself. It draws from God constantly, da'iman, over and over. Every moment of the life of the contingent being, he is drawing from the life source that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, drawing down from the divine names to be able to manifest certain things within his life. The only reason you see is because he is Basir. The only reason you hear is because you tap into the divine name of Samir and you draw power from it, and thus you are able to hear. The only reason you are alive is because he is Hay, and so you tap into the divine name of Al-Hay and you continue to live. And the more the contingent being understands the divine names and connects with the divine names, the more he ascends within himself towards that perfection. He continues to understand, and the more he understands, the more he rises within himself. And those that from amongst the contingent beings that possess all of the characteristics of the wajibul wujud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their most perfect form that a mumkinul wujud can hold, those entities are known as Insaan-ul-Kaamil, the perfect human, who manifests within their wujud the total divine names in their absolute perfection. And we know that the Insaan-ul-Kaamil are none other than the Wujud Mubarak of Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And they are Insaan-ul-Kaamil, for their existence was the start of everything. Their wujud is primordial. The first existence, the first tajalli of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came into the nur of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. It manifested in their nur, and everything else came into being through their nur. In a narration, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam says, he says, خلقنا الله نحن حيث لا سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا عرش ولا جنة ولا نار. He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us when there was no sky, no earth, there was no arsh, there was no Jannah, there was no fire, no Jahannam. It was just us. كنا نسبح حين لا تسبيح ونقدسه حين لا تقديس. And we used to do his tasbih when there was none to do his tasbih. And we used to glorify him when there was none in existence to glorify him. And then the Holy Prophet says, and then when Allah made the irada to create, when he made that intention to create the rest of creation, فَتَقَ نُورِي, he split my nur. فَخَلَقَ مِنْهُ الْعَرْشِ, and from my nur he created the arsh. And the arsh, the throne of God, is from my nur. And my nur is from the nur of Allah. And so I am greater than the arsh of Allah. ثم فتق النور ابن أبي طالب, and then he split the nur of Ali. فخلق منه الملائكة, and he created from the nur of Ali all of the angels, and the angels are all from the nur of Ali, and the nur of Ali is from the nur of Allah. So the son of Abu Talib is greater than all of the angels. ثم فتق نور ابنتي فاطمة, and then he split the nur of my daughter Fatima, and from it he created the high skies and all of the earth. And the earth and the skies have been created from the nur of Fatima, and the nur of Fatima is from the nur of Allah. And so Fatima is greater than both the heavens and the earth, more than the skies and the earth. ثم فتق نور الحسن, and then he split the nur of Hassan, and from it he created the sun and the moon. And the sun and the moon are from the nur of Hassan, and the nur of Hassan is from the nur of Allah. And so Hassan is greater than the sun and the moon. Then he split the nur of Hussein, and from it he created Jannah and the Hurul Ain. And so Jannah and the Hurul Ain are from the nur of Hussein, and the nur of Hussein is from the nur of Allah. And so Hussein is greater than the heavens and all of the Hurul Ain. Everything in existence comes from their nur. Their nur, their existence is primordial. And so all of this world that you see is set in a vertical structure. At the highest realm, at the highest point, before the realm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the realm of wilayah, the realm of divine authority. And at the top of the realm of wilayah sits the wali tam, the one that is the total wali, the one that holds total wilaya, total divine authority devolved to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that realm, in that position, sit the Holy Prophet and his Ahlul Bayt. Everything that comes from Allah passes through the realm of wilaya, and from them it goes towards Allah. Anything that comes from the mortal plane must pass the realm of wilaya in this vertical existence, and through them it reaches Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of the divine faith, all of the divine blessings first come to the Hujjah of Allah, the one that possesses total divine authority, and then from him it is devolved down into the rest of existence. These aren't my words. You're all looking very concerned. Amirul Mu'mineen in Nahj al-Balagha has a letter, has a number of letters which he sends to Muawiyah. In one of those letters where he's comparing himself, he says, Muawiyah, how can you compare yourself to me? How is there any comparison? Whereas we have Sayyidatun Nisa and you have Hamalatul Hatab. Yeah? He says, what is the comparison here? In that letter, Amirul Mu'mineen says a line. He says to him, O Muawiyah, نحن صنائع ربنا والخلق بعد صنائعنا. Says Muawiyah, we are the recipients of all of the divine blessings. وَالْخَلْقُ بَعْدُ, and the rest of existence receives it after from us. Everything that comes from the divine names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala passes through the malakuti wujud of the hujjah of Allah, through the malakuti wujud of the Insaan-ul-Kaamil, and then it is distributed amongst the rest of existence. And there are a number of reasons, and we really don't have time to go into it, but the simplest way of explaining this is, if you look at the Holy Quran, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن, if we were to reveal this Quran upon a mountain, it would be destroyed. Meaning that the words of God, nothing in existence has the capacity to directly bear the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only being that has the ability to bear the direct words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the blessed heart of the Holy Prophet, where the wahi would come. All together, please, one loud salawat. So it is only his heart that can bear the direct divine revelation. And so the role of the Hujjah, the Insaan-ul-Kaamil, the Wali Tam, is what? He receives the direct faith from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, in the same way, the Urafa, the ulama, they give the example that it's like when a mother has a child. Now this is a newborn child. She can't feed it meat. She can't feed it. If she does, it will perish. It will die. So what does she do? She consumes it. Her body digests it. It creates a palatable food for the child to eat, and the child grows through her milk. Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, in the similar way, they take the direct faith of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then they digest this, and then from them it is given out into palatable forms to rest of existence. And so this link continues, because remember, this isn't shirk. What did we say? Those that are concerned, what did we say? We said the structure is vertical. At the top is always Allah. The other thing that we said is that everything except Allah is mumkin al-wujud. that nothing can manifest from their own essence. That which is mumkinul wujud cannot manifest from its essence, including Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. But they can receive constantly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then from there give out. And so when we say and we talk about this maqam of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, we're still keeping them within the realm of mumkinul wujud, but they're receiving direct faith from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so they are the link between the rest of existence and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Between them and Allah there is no barrier, there is no wasila, but they are the wasila between khalq, makhluk, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if this link is to be removed, then all of existence ceases to exist. That's why the narration says, لَوْلَا حُجَّ لَسَاخَتِ الْأَرْضُ بِأَهْلِهَا. Were it not for the hujjah of Allah, the earth would collapse in on its inhabitants. The hujjah of Allah is the integral cog in all of this. Every single good you see in this world, every phase of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it comes from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Its origin is Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam in the malakuti realm. Not my words. إمام الهادي زيارة جامعة كبيرة إن ذكر الخير كنتم أوله وأصله ومعدنه ومأواه ومنتهى. O Ahl al-Bayt, wherever there is any mention of khair, of good in this dunya, كنتم أوله, you are the first of it and you are the last of it, you are the roots of it, you are the foundations of it, and you are the branches and the pinnacle of that khair. All khair comes from them. And there is no way towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except through them. You can't reach Allah except through them, because this structure is vertical. All that wish to ascend towards Allah must first submit to the hujjah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Abu Khalid al-Kabuli comes to Imam al-Sadiq salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. He says, I asked the Imam about the ayah of Surah At-Taghabun, ayah number 8, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَآمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَالنُّورِ الَّذِي أَنزَلْنَا. And believe in Allah and the Prophet and that nur that we have revealed. He says, I asked the Imam in regards to this nur, what is this nur? The Imam replied to him, Ya Aba Khalid, an-nur wallahi al-a'immatu min ali Muhammad. That by Allah, this nur is the Imams from Ali Muhammad. Till when? Ila yawm al-qiyamah, until the day of judgment. This nur that has come are the A'imma alayhimus salam until the day of judgment. وَهُمْ وَاللَّهِ نُورُ اللَّهِ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ. And they by Allah are that nur that Allah revealed. وَهُمْ وَاللَّهِ نُورُ اللَّهِ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ. And they by Allah are the nur of Allah in the heavens and in the earth. Wallahi ya Aba Khalid, O by Allah, O Aba Khalid, لنور الإمام في قلوب المؤمنين أنور من الشمس المضيئة بالنهار. By Allah, O Aba Khalid, the nur of the Imam in the hearts of the mu'mineen is brighter than the shining sun in the middle of the day. That nur that exists within your hearts. وَهُمْ وَاللَّهِ يُنَوِّرُونَ قُلُوبَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَيَحْجُبُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ نُورَهُمْ عَمَّنْ يَشَاءُ فَتُظْلِمُ قُلُوبَهُمْ. And they are those who illuminate the hearts of the believers, and Allah chooses who to hide this light from, and He chooses who to expose this light to. Then the Imam says, Wallahi ya Aba Khalid, لا يحبون عبد ويتولنا حتى يطهر الله قلبه. Says, O Aba Khalid, by Allah, there is no servant that loves us and has that tawalla, has that ardent love for us, except that Allah purifies his heart. But then the point for why I gave you this narration is this last line. وَلَا يُطَهَّرُ اللَّهُ قَلْبَ عَبْدٍ حَتَّى يُسَلِّمَ لَنَا. Says, but Allah will not purify the heart of any servant until they have submitted to us. Submission to the hujjah of Allah is the way to reach the submission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Shia of Ahlul Bayt on the path towards Allah has one main mission: submission to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. If he submits to them, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses him, because submission to them in reality is the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they are a prerequisite in all ibadat. Ibadat without wilayat is not ibadat. That's shaitanat. One that does not have ma'rifah or does not submit to the wali of Allah, it's not ibadat. That is exactly what shaitan did. Allah said to him, what? Do sajda to my wali. At that time Adam was the wali. Do sajda to my wali. He refuses. The sajda was not one of ibadah. It was one of respect. It was one of tawazu, one of humbleness towards Adam. But he refused. He said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, don't let me not do sajda to him, and I will worship you for thousands of years. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replied to him that I do not need you to worship me the way that you want. Rather, I want you to worship me the way I want. And this is the way. So one that worships without ma'rifah of the hujjah of Allah, without the wilayah in his heart, that isn't ibadat. It isn't ibadat. Hajj. People go for Hajj. You go for essentially ibadat, but people go with the niyyah of liqa Allah. We're going to the house of God. We're going to the house of God. And so we're going to meet with Allah, metaphorically speaking, to the place that we turn all our attention to. But yet, the night before the Hajj, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam gives a khutbah. In the last line of this khutbah, the Imam says, من كان بازلا فينا مهجته وموطنا على لقاء الله فليرحل معنا فإني راحل مصبحا إن شاء الله. He says, those of you that have made an intention to spend your blood in our way and have made a firm intention to meet Allah. Ya Imam, people are coming for Hajj. They are Hajis, they put on the ihram, they're coming there to meet with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the Imam is saying that if you want to meet with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have a firm intention to meet with God. فَلْيَرْحَلْ مَعْنَا فَإِنِّي رَاحِلٌ مُصْبِحًا إِنشَاءَ. Come with me, for I am leaving in the morning. Meaning a Hajj without the ma'rifah of the hujjah of Allah is not Hajj. And this is why when Abbas gives his khutbah on top of the Kaaba and he's addressing all of these Hajjis, these people that are preparing for the Hajj, he says, أَيُّهَا الْكَفَرَةُ الْفَجَرَةُ. He says, O kuffar, O fujjar, أتصدون طريق البيت الإمام البررة من هو أحق به من سائر البرية من هو أدنى به ولولا حكم الله الجلية واختباره العلية لطار البيت قبل أن يمشي لديه قد استلم الناس الحجر والحجر يستلم يديه. He says, أيها الكفرة الفجرة, O kuffar, O fujjar, are you trying to stop the way of the true Imam towards the Kaaba? Were it not for the order of God and the laws that God has placed down, you would have seen that the Bayt would have lifted itself from its own foundations and flown towards Hussein before Hussein could walk towards it. All of mankind wishes to kiss Hajar al-Aswad, but Hajar al-Aswad wishes to kiss the hand of Hussein. Having the ma'rifah of the Imam, you cannot do ibadah without ibadah that is devoid of the wilayah and the ma'rifah of the wali of Allah is not ibadat. It's not ibadat. Submission to the wali of Allah is what is success. And that's why in the letter that Sayyid al-Shuhada writes to the people of Basra, he says, "Ala wa inna sunnata qad umitat wa inna al-bid'ata qad uhiyat." Says that you should know that the sunnah of the Prophet has been killed and innovation has become rife within society. But in tuti'u amri wa tasma'u qawli ahdikum sabil al-rashad. He says, but if you listen to what I say and you obey my commands, I will take you towards success. I will take you towards rushd, towards that success. It is only the hujjah of Allah that can teach you the ways towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is none other than the hujjah, because he is Insaan-ul-Kaamil, the one that manifests the characteristics of God in their absolute. That's why the sixth Imam says, Nahnu asma'ullah. We are the manifestations of the names of God. We manifest all of that. This series that we will start from today is about, I want to focus on the characteristics of the Insaan-ul-Kaamil. What characteristics does the Insaan-ul-Kaamil manifest? And then analyze our own lives to see how much of those characteristics, because I said we all have these characteristics within us, because we have to draw from the divine names. But how much of those have manifested in our lives? How much of that, how much of the seerah of the Imam is in our lives? So today I want to look at the first one, and that is the characteristic of tawazu', of humbleness. In the Holy Quran, in Surah Al-Furqan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He speaks about His blessed servants, He says, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ, and the servants of the beneficent Lord, الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا, they walk upon the earth humbly. وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا, and when they come across an ignorant person, they just say to them, peace, salam, and they carry on their way. Tawazu', humbleness. How much of this humbleness do we have within our lives? It's this characteristic that is loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One day Allah says to Musa alayhi salam, says, Musa, next time you come back to talk to me, I want you to bring with you something that is lower than you. So Musa alayhi salam says, okay. So he goes, and when the time is for him to return back to do munajat with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he begins looking, remembering what Allah had said, that bring something that is lower than you. So Musa alayhi salam begins looking at the people, sees a farmer, he says, this guy's just a farmer. He's not doing anything, he's not a prophet of God, I am a prophet of God. So he looks at the farmer, he says, yes, maybe I'll take him. And then he thinks, wait, no. This person is growing food for society. He's putting in hard work every day. I don't do that. no, he's better than me. So he looks around again, he sees a mother with a child. Says, well, she's only raising a child, she's not really contributing to society, as it were. And I'm a prophet of God, and I have a mission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let me, take her. And he says, no, actually, she's raising the next generation. Day and night. I, as a prophet, will go out for a few hours and try and guide these people. In the end, I still go back to my bed and relax. But the mother is the one that is constantly with this child, constantly nurturing and raising this child and molding it in this dunya. And incidentally, on a side note, once Sheikh Al-Ansari was asked, why are there no female prophets? And he says, because they have been given a task that is greater than the Anbiya of Allah, and that is the one of motherhood. It's more difficult than prophethood, because it's constant, day and night. So he says, no, I can't take this lady. She's better than me. So he looks around a few other people, and keeps finding reasons. So he said, wait, hold on, Allah said bring anything. So he says, okay, let me look at the animals. So he sees a cow. And he says, well, it's just a cow. I'll take this with me. And he says, no, wait, hold on. This cow provides milk. Its meat is utilized. Its skin is utilized. It has more use than me. So he says, leave it. She's a donkey. It's just a donkey. But he says, no, this donkey is carrying the burden of people, physical burden. I don't carry any physical burden for others. Musa alayhi salam, dejected, he thinks this is not possible. So as he's walking, thinking he's failed, on the side he sees a flea-bitten dog lying, thirsty, about to die. And so Musa says, perfect. Challenge completed. So he looks around for a piece of rope that he can tie. So as he's looking around, a young boy comes running over and he throws a bone to the dog. The dog takes the bone, he bites it, crunches it, and stands up, lets out a bark, wags its tail, looks up towards the child in a thankful way. The child laughs and runs away. Musa looks at the dog and says, he consumed one thing, he made the child smile, he showed appreciation, he was thankful of the one that gave him what he did, his rizq for that day. And then on top of that, he made the child's heart happy by making him smile. Musa says, this dog is better than me. I didn't make the child smile. So he gives up, goes back to the mountain. Musa, Allah says, I told you to bring something that was lower than you. Why didn't you bring anything? Says, Ya Allah, wherever I looked, I could not find anything that was lower than me. I found everything to be better than me in some way or some shape or form. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Musa, had you brought someone with you, I would have removed you from this position of being a prophet of God. Says Musa, the reason I made you a prophet, the reason why you are so dear to me, is that you do not consider yourself to be better than anything. That's tawazu', that level of humbleness. You look at Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. When people would come to visit him, Ibn Mas'ud narrates that one day one of the A'rab came from the deserts to visit Rasulullah to try and inquire about Islam. And as he stood in front of the Holy Prophet, he began stuttering out of nervousness. And the Holy Prophet embraced him, said, "My brother, why are you so nervous?" Says, "I'm not a king. Relax. It's okay. Speak with ease." This Prophet that had this level of love for all of the creation. When he would sit amongst his companions, he would sit in a circle that had no definitive start or end. So at times people would come in and look around and not be able to tell and say, "Which one of you is the Prophet?" Because he would sit amongst them. When Salman first came to visit the Holy Prophet, he was coming from Persia, from this whole system of kings, and Salman comes and straight away falls at the feet of the Holy Prophet, begins to kiss the feet of the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet lifts him up, says, "Salman, why are you acting like people act with the tyrant kings?" Says, "I don't want this." Humble. Holy Prophet said, "There are 5 things that I will never leave in my life." The first is that sitting on the floor and eating amongst the slaves, or like the slaves. When I sit to eat, I want to be sitting on the floor. The second thing is, I will never leave riding a saddleless donkey. You know, people have saddles, but those that were poor at the time couldn't afford saddles. So the Prophet of God would ride around on the lowest form of transport, and he would make sure it was saddleless. He says, "I will never leave milking my goats with my own hands." You know, these are sort of menial tasks that if we ever, when we go back home, here obviously everybody gets beat into shape. They have to do housework and things. But when you go back home and your dollars extend a lot further, then you're like, "Oh, okay, right, now I'm going to get someone else to do all my work. Clean this and clean that, and live in maid and raise my children, do all sorts, because now my money extends further." But the Holy Prophet says no. He used to pride himself on doing these things himself. Says, the other thing that I will never leave is wearing simple clothing, rough clothing. And then the last thing he says that I will never leave is saying salam to the children, so much so that it becomes a sunnah after me, that the adults say salam to the children first, not wait for a child to say salam to them. That humbleness of the Holy Prophet, that it wasn't just humbleness, there was empathy. He felt, not only was he there to counsel the people, but he felt their pain. He would feel the pain of their misguidance. He would weep, he would cry. At times he would think maybe it's because of him, of himself. He's not trying hard enough. And so he would stay up all night increasing his ibadah until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals ayat to him, says that, "O Prophet, we didn't reveal this Quran to be a burden upon you. What are you doing to yourself?" Because he felt, had that empathy in his heart. So he had this tawadu', this humbleness within him. I do one thing and I want everyone to know about it. I make sure everybody knows the most profound thing that I mentioned off the minbar yesterday. Because I don't have that tawadu'. Ayatollah Naraqi, the writer of Jami' al-Sa'adah, this book is one of those textbooks of spiritual purification and understanding the journey of the soul. When he wrote that book, someone came to Najaf and presented a copy to Sayyid al-Khoi. And they said to him that, not Sayyid al-Khoi, to Ayatollah Bahr al-Ulum. They presented it to him and they said, there is this chap called Naraqi, and he's written this book. Bahrul Ulum opened this book. He flipped through it, read it, said, it's very good. May Allah bless this man for writing this book. He put it to the side. A few months later, Agha Naraqi came to Najaf. And it was announced. So people were coming and they were visiting him, and he said to his people that were with him, says, look, we're here in Najaf, let's go and visit Bahrul Ulum. Let's go benefit from him. So Agha Naraqi, along with his companions, they enter into the house of Ayatollah Bahrul Ulum, and there is a class that is going on, and Ayatollah Bahrul Ulum is speaking. Ayatollah Naraqi walks in, says salam. Ayatollah Bahrul Ulum replies to his salam and then ignores him. Finishes the class, carries on speaking. Naraqi, after a short while, stands up, asks for permission to leave, and he leaves. A few days later, he says to his companions, let's go visit Bahrul Ulum again. The man reminds you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has a nuraniyat about him. They say, Bahrul Ulum didn't even look at you last time. He says, no, doesn't matter. Bahrul Ulum is Agha, he's our elder. We should go. And so again he goes, and this time Agha Bahrul Ulum is even ruder towards him. Just simply salam and then ignores him. And Agha Naraqi sits there again, quietly. After a while, asks for permission and leaves. The day before he said to leave Najaf, he says to his students again, says, it will be bad if we don't go and see Bahrul Ulum one more time. Let's just go and see him. The man reminds you of God. He has such nur about him. They say to him, no more. Bahrul Ulum has disrespected you twice now. Bahrul Ulum has ignored you twice now. He's not even given you the time of day. And you want to keep going back. He says, look, Bahrul Ulum is our older. He's our elder. It's okay. Let's go. We can benefit from him. This time they tell Bahrul Ulum that Naraqi is coming. This third time now, Bahrul Ulum stands up, runs out of his house barefoot to the head of the alleyway. And as Agha Naraqi is coming, he embraces him, he welcomes him, he kisses him, he brings him into his home. He sits there, he talks to him. He says to him, you know what it was? You had written this book on akhlaq and of controlling the nafs. And it was such a good book. But I just wanted to see whether the author was acting upon that which he had written. What would I do in that situation? We go to one marja who may be harsh with us, and we're like, forget him, we're never going back to him again. He was harsh with us. Told me to grow a beard or whatever. Because my arrogance won't allow it. It won't allow it. But you see how the ones that have controlled their nafs have created this tawadu' within themselves. So this tawadu' amongst the mu'mineen in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost. The way I address Allah, the way I speak to Allah, the way I ask Allah for my hajat. You see people in Layal al-Qadr, the night of destiny, the night where they can change their lives, and they're sitting leaning against the wall, their legs are stretched out. Ya Rabbi, Ya Bika, Ya Allah, how long is this going to take? And they want their du'as to be answered. And they're like, why doesn't Laylatul Qadr change me? I asked for this. Really? How did you ask? Tawadu' in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Humbleness in front of Allah. Humbleness in front of the Hujjah of Allah, in front of the Insaan-ul-Kaamil. What is my connection with my Imam? An individual who cannot humble himself in front of the Hujjah of Allah, he is on a one-way track towards destruction. For they hold the keys to everything in existence. One day Mutawakkil Mal'oon, he used to think of different ways to try and humiliate or threaten Imam al-Hadi. And so one day, what he did, he gathered his army, 90,000 of them. And he told all of them to ride out into the desert and fill the sacks of their saddles with earth. And then bring it back. And then he made all of them one by one empty these sacks till it made a huge hill. 90,000 sacks of earth. And then he told them all to stand in military formation. And then he ordered for Imam al-Hadi to be brought. He takes Imam to the top of this hill and he says, look at my army. Do you see them? 90,000, all of them, with one command from me, in order to try and threaten, to try and intimidate the Imam. Imam looks at him, says, Mutawakkil, would you also like to see my army? Mutawakkil, shocked, says, your army? The Imam recited a dhikr, and the heavens opened in front of the eyes of Mutawakkil. And from east to west, the skies were covered with the angels of war, with arrows pointed towards Mutawakkil. Mutawakkil, seeing this, faints and falls unconscious. When he comes around, the Imam says, did you see our army? And he says, you've got nothing to worry about. We have no desire for your dunya. We have no desire for your dunya. The Hujjah of Allah holds the keys to existence. Every atom is subservient to the Hujjah of Allah. So tawadhu' in front of the Hujjah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you don't, it leads to distraction. Look at Karbala, pre-Karbala. There are two sets of people. Imam is going to visit various people to tell them to come along with him. He goes to visit Ubaydullah Hurr Jofi, who an enemy of Amirul Mu'mineen. Imam goes and he visits him, says, look, I know you were against my father in Siffin. I know you didn't help my brother Hassan, but I'm giving you the opportunity. Come with me and I guarantee you the shifa'ah of my grandfather on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Ubaydullah Hurr Jofi says to the Imam, says, here, take my sword. It is the sharpest sword. I have a ride, a horse. That is one of the finest breeds. Take that. And my shield. Take this on your quest. Imam says, I don't need your horse and your shield and your sword. I need you to come with me. Remember what I said yesterday. The cry of the Imam of his Hal min Nasir was not that the Imam needed that physical help, but it was his desire to take people towards success, towards salvation. Says to Ubaydullah Hurr Jofi, we don't need these things, we need you to come. He says, I can't come with you. And he doesn't join the Imam. Following the event of Ashura, he's seen walking amongst the bodies of the Shuhada saying, oh Ubaydullah, until you are alive, mourn the fact that the son of Zahra came to you for help and you didn't join him. And then his end is one of absolute dhillah, of absolute humiliation. He joins Mukhtar, then he joins Zubair, and then he joins, in the end he leaves all of them, and then he ends up committing suicide, then jumping into the Furat and drowning himself. Where could he have been? And where did he end up? On the flip side, someone similar, Zuhair ibn Qayn, also fought against Amirul Mu'mineen in Siffin. Imam comes to him. Zuhair is avoiding Imam for days. On the path to Karbala as they're riding, Zuhair says, I heard Hussein was up to something, but I wanted no part of his revolution or what he was doing. And so wherever Abu Abdullah would camp, I would make sure that my camp was further so he couldn't come. Says until one day we were forced to camp in the same place. At that point, says Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam sent a messenger that Zuhair Abi Abdullah wishes to meet you. Zuhair ibn Qayn says, tell Hussein alayhi salam I'll come and I'll see him. Says, no Zuhair, you don't understand. Hussein alayhi salam has come to your tent. Zuhair stands up, he goes. History doesn't record what they spoke about. But all that it does recall is that when Zuhair returned, his family members say it was as if Noor was dripping from the face of Zuhair. He says to all of them, take my wife back to her parents in Kufa. All of you, I remove my oath of loyalty from all of you, all of my brothers, my kinsmen, return back. They say, Zuhair, what about you? He says, me? I'm going with Abu Abdullah. I'm going with Hussein. Two individuals. One had the tawazu', one had the humbleness in front of the hujjah of Allah. Other did not. And look now where their end is. Humble yourself in these ayyam of Abi Abdullah and see where he will take you. Hold on to the coattails of Imam al-Hussein and see what heights he will take you to. The 2nd of Muharram is fast approaching. And we often remember on this day the leaving of Imam al-Hussein from Medina. It's very difficult for someone to leave their home, and especially a home like Medina. But yet Hussein alayhi salam had to do it. But not alone. No, with him was a sister like Zainab and Kulthum. But when these honorable ladies came out, there was Abbas and there was Ali Akbar, and they were surrounding them from every angle. They made sure they cleared the areas. They kept a radius around the women, that no one would see the daughters of Ali and Zahra. And like this, Zainab and Kulthum and the other women left Medina to go towards Karbala. That was the departure of Zainab from Medina. But there was the arrival of Zainab back to Medina as well. But the arrival of Zainab back to Medina was very different. When Kulthum saw the walls of Medina, she called out, Ya Medina tujaddina la taqbalina. O Medina of our grandfather, do not accept us. For when we left, we had all our sons and men with us. But when we return, none of them are by our sides. Imam al-Sajjad says that, O Bishr, my aunt Zainab says, she will not go into Medina until the inhabitants of Medina know what has happened to us Ahl al-Bayt. He says to him, Bishr, your father was a great poet. Do you also recite poetry? He says, yes, Yabna Rasulillah. He says, so Bishr, go in and tell the people of Medina what has happened. Bishr rides into Medina calling out, Ya Ahla Yathrib la muqama lakum biha, qutil al-Husayn fa admu'i midraru. الجسم منه بكربلاء مدرج والرأس على القناة يدار. He says, "O people of Medina, Medina is no longer a place for you to remain, for Hussein has been killed in Karbala. His body was left in Karbala and his head was paraded around the streets." The people of Medina all surround Bishr. They begin to cry. At that point, a lady comes towards Bishr. She has a child in her hand. She says to him, "Ya Na'i, O man that is announcing, أخبرني عن ولدي الحسين. What news have you brought of my son Hussein?" Bishr says, "I was confused. Who is this lady that is calling Hussein her son? For I know that Fatima died many years ago." He asks someone, "Who is this lady?" They say, "Oh Bishr, this is al-Baneen, zawjat Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is al-Baneen, the wife of Amir al-Mu'mineen." He looks at her, he says, "Ya al-Baneen, عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك Abdullah. Oh al-Baneen, accept my condolences for the death of your son Abdullah." She says to him, "Bishr, I didn't ask you about Abdullah. Tell me about Hussein." He says, "Ya البنين عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك عثمان. Oh البنين, accept my condolences for your son Uthman." She says, "I didn't ask you about him. Tell me about Hussein." He says to her, "Ya البنين عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك جعفر." Oh البنين, accept my condolences for the death of your son Ja'far. She says, "I didn't ask you about Ja'far." He says, "Ya al-Baneen, عظم الله لك الأجر بقمر العشيرة بالفضل العباس." We're hearing the name of Abbas. al-Baneen drops the child in her hand. She holds on to her chest. She says, "Oh man, you have broken my heart, but I didn't ask you about Abbas. Tell me about Hussein." Bishr says to her, "Ya al-Baneen, what can I tell you about Abi Abdullah? He was killed in Karbala. Al-Jismu minhu bi Karbala mudarrajon." They trampled his body in Karbala. وَالرَّأْسُ مِنْهُ عَلَى الْقَنَاةِ يُدَارُ. And they paraded his head around the streets. The people began weeping. al-Baneen runs towards the house of Zainab. Zainab alayha salam is already inside the house. She's told her slave that whoever comes, tell them, please come another day, for Zainab needs to mourn alone. When the door is knocked, this servant girl opens the door. There is an elderly lady. She says, "I'm here to see Zainab." She says, "Our mistress Zainab has said that no one should come." Says, "Just tell her that I am sharik with her in this sorrow. I am with her in this sorrow." The lady goes in. She says to Bibi Zainab, she says, "Oh Sayyidati, there is a lady outside, an elderly lady." She says, "She is with you in this sorrow." Zainab alayha salam knows straight away who it is. She runs towards the door. She says, "Let her in." al-Baneen runs in. She sees Zainab. al-Baneen cries, "Wa Husayna." Zainab calls out, "Wa Rasa." ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. With these tears in your eyes, raise your hands for dua. Ya Allah, for the sake of these tears, for Abi Abdullah, Ya Allah, forgive our sins. Ya Allah, forgive the sins of our parents. Ya Allah, those of our parents that are alive, give them long lives. Those of our parents that have left this world, give them place next to Ali Muhammad in Jannah. Ya Allah, I don't know what hajat, what difficulties, what sorrows those in attendance of this majlis have within their lives. But Ya Allah, for the sake of the broken heart of al-Baneen, Ya Allah, fulfill their hajat, remove their sorrows, dispel all their difficulties. Ya Allah, those that are ill, give them shifa'ah. Those that are in debt, clear their debts. Ya Allah, keep safe the Shia of Ali Muhammad around the world. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our time and allow us to be amongst his true muntadhareen, his true waiters, Matam Hussain.